I'm going to show you an example of a controller when it starts to malfunction. So if I switch it off, say you see it's showing Sunday, or Friday, it's starting to be glitchy, but we can still work around that if we need to. These controllers always do this type of problems. They don't show what's the dial is set to. So if I put Monday, you see it's on Monday, Tuesday. What's the counter restriction? What days?
Tuesdays and Fridays.
So we're supposed to do Tuesdays and Fridays. So we got Tuesday, and we're doing it based off the Hillsborough County water restrictions. That's Friday, which is fine. The best time for it to run, we got Sunday. So take that off. The best time for it to run, it's at 4 a.m. Any water that's left over, let's say for instance, if you activate your zones at midnight, you'll have puddles left over, and that can harbor fungus. So we try to set the controller at 4 a.m. So any puddles that are left over in the morning, the sun will evaporate it. There's this one here, we do like this is a pretty big yard. Thinking about 25 minutes per zone, since they're doing 2 days. I would say like 25 minutes per zone. On this specific zone, we've actually discovered to eliminate about 8 sprinklers, if I remember correctly, on this system. Because there's, again, watering behind the AC, watering behind in the back in the very far end. Sprinkler's not even doing anything. And with us converting one of these pop-ups to a rotary, it gets more coverage, increases pressure, and more. We get more coverage because we're eliminating sprinklers and converting some to rotaries where we have a bigger area to cover, which is perfectly fine. So I'm able to move to this controller fairly easy now. So if I'm gonna do like 25 minutes per zone, which is fine. You see when it does this, I'm in zone 2 and it's not. So sometimes I always come across this situation where you see how it tapped it. The controllers do the same thing. I've dealt with over 100 of them. And if you see it's on zone 1, but we're on the dial, it says 3. So if I tap it, it changes. You see, just like that. Doing this for so many years, I've gotten used to certain things you can just mess around with and work around. This is a total of 6 zones. The way you can tell if there's 6 zones, you just take this off. The wires are underneath there, and there's our last wire, which is 6. So you have one common wire and each wire goes to one valve, but there's one common wire. So we have a total of 6 zones. So I'm going to the 6th station now. And I'll put 25 minutes on that too. We want only one start time, so there shouldn't be any other start time on this here, which is fine. We just want one, and we got to check the other program. You can see the program A on there. So we've got to make sure there's no multiple programs, because this is another thing that always happens with controllers. They have someone come in here and add a start time, and that'll tell the controller to run double. So it'll activate again without you knowing on a different program. And you're thinking that you're only watering once a day, but you're actually watering, like, depending how many start times you put on there, you might be watering up to like 6 times a day. And that's where your bill comes in, like, really high. And then you're like confused what's going on. And when we get to projects, this is one of the things we look at. First, we look at the controller, make sure there's no multiple start times. So we got the day is Sunday, which is fine. And it's what time is it?
The 10:41.
So it's 10:41. So make sure to put that 10:41. So I can still work with this controller, but going back to what I was saying, most of these problems with this high water bill is a simple adjustment on the controller or having too many start times. Or sometimes, that, for example, this controller it's glitchy already, but we don't know exactly if from my experience, when it's glitchy like that, it still runs. As long as you don't mess with it, you can run another year on it, but I really don't recommend recommend to use a controller or do this type of, once a controller starts doing this, it's better off to replace it to avoid any more future problems. But we can always work around any kind of project and try to make everything work. One of the things you don't want to sacrifice is on your pattern. But when you have a problem going to what I said with the overwatering, the leaks, or you're having a high water bill, you look at the controller. That's one of the things you look at. You look at make sure you have a rain sensor. We check this rain sensor. All you do is press the button on that switch there, and it tells you if it's, you run a zone, put a zone 1, and just press that button, and it'll deactivate the zone. You also want to make sure at the water meter, you can do a leak test from the backflow to the water meter. And there's a little gauge on this water meter where you can identify if there's a steady leak, and it'll turn that little gauge. But there's methods. I mean, those are the things you look at to make sure your water bill is not too high. But I'll just finish up with this controller, and I've programmed it, and we're all set with it.